talking about parks is so appropriate right now because as a city we're reviewing our current parks master plan and reviewing whether it is current and appropriate for where we are today with our parks. You know, we've got great value here in the city of Franklin. A family spends about $40 a year in their tax money to help keep our parks up. It's almost, I think it's over 700 acres now. So it's great value for our community. And I would like to say that probably my family is one of the largest users of the park in the city. It's really an appropriate time. I had a conversation yesterday about Pinkerton Park, our most popular park by far, but how whenever the board was considering Pinkerton Park, there was a lot of controversy about it. Why are we going to buy 40 acres in the floodplain? But I think it's turned out to be a good deal for the city of Franklin. So I think it's really a great time for us to look as we review this master plan, whether do we have enough parkland? Do we have the correct type of parkland? Where are our gaps? Where do we need to have other parks? And so on. So this is a great opportunity, and I look forward to the presentation today. And just to remind everybody that how we pay for our parks, I think sometimes parks get to be kind of a stepchild because we have so much growth going on. There's so many demands for our funds. But we do fund parks through our general fund. Hotel motel tax help to improve our parks. Fortunately, we have many corporate partners sometimes that we can work with. And then I think that the Friends of Franklin Parks LLC deserves a special shout out. Their vision that they're going to help us develop our parks through a public-private partnership is an awesome opportunity for us as a city. And today, whenever we break ground for the multi-purpose horse arena at Harlansdale, an opportunity to bring the horse back to Harlansdale and continue to develop our Central Park is a great opportunity. So, that's all I've got to say.
Welcome back and introduce our speaker then. Friends of Franklin Parks and Franklin Lamar are proud today to be working with the City of Franklin Parks Department and Barge Wagner, Sumner, and Cannon to welcome Dr. John Compton. Dr. Compton holds the rank of University Distinguished Professor and is both a Regents Professor and a Presidential Professor for Teaching Excellence at Texas A&M University. Okay, I didn't see anybody do an SEC call or anything, or alumni call for that, but he has been with Texas A&M since 1974, and I will just tell you that he is working as part of the Barge Wagner Sumner Cannon team on the Parks Master Plan update. But what is wonderful about that is he is recognized internationally for his expertise in the areas of parks and the economic impact of parks and leisure services on a community. We are very lucky that he traveled here to this cold, cold place today, and we look forward to hearing from Dr. John Compton, and I'll turn the program over to him.
Thank you for the introduction, but you missed out the most important thing, and that is that I'm not a native Texan. And if you haven't figured that out before you've got to figure it out now. The only thing that kind of hacks me off is when people say to me that I've got an accent. Is the Queen's English we're supposed to be speaking here, and it's my version of it that's got to count. I was over visiting with my mother a few years ago. She passed when she was 95, and she was in this nursing home there in Liverpool, my hometown, and she says, "Lad, I know you're that big school out there, you're doing something useful, but I'm your mother, lad, you don't have to show off to me with your Texas accent." So I have this problem, when I'm home, I've got an accent, when over here I've got an accent, and I struggle. Because I have problems with communicating with people, I put everything I say up on here so you can read it. I'm here to talk about economic benefits of recreational parks, and there's about a dozen of them, I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to touch hopefully on 4. If we get through 4 in 20 minutes, we'll do quite well. I really appreciate the mayor's introduction because many times parks and recreation are considered frills, and the mayor used the word stepchild, and it's very true. We take it as a quality of life issue. Many times we do not understand the economic impact that parks and recreation has on a community, and I really appreciate Roger's bringing that forward as an important dimension of what we're going to talk about. So, my starting point is commend to you this exercise, which I would urge you to do with the groups you're associated with. You ask people to write down the place you'd like to live given your druthers. And because you don't understand proper English, you have to translate it for them. Your preferred place, ignoring practical concerns such as job, family, language, and heritage. You ask your group to write down the place of your dreams. Where would you like to live given no constraints? And they write down a place. And then you say to them, write in one sentence why you picked that place. Give them a minute, and they write it down. And then you go to the people in the group and you write up on the whiteboard the key nouns and adjectives. Here's what you'll find. More than 80% of participants will cite some park, recreational, cultural, or environmental ambience dimension in their responses. That will have something to do, central to why they picked the place of their dreams. Now just store that one for a moment. So I suspect that Franklin is like most of us in the community, and I was on our civic council for a number of years. It was the mayor pro tem in our city, and there are, all of us have economic groups, and we're trying to attract businesses to town, because obviously businesses are the economic basis of our community. And the businesses we're all trying to attract are what I call the footloose industries. It's the high-tech, company headquarters, research and development, high-end services. They can locate anywhere, and we're all competing for it. Now, what is the primary asset of those businesses? And the answer is people. High-end, professional, scientific employees. Where do those people want to live? Well, they want to live in the places you just identified with your group. Places that have those amenities. And companies locate where the talent is. So the increased quality of life, in fact, creates the talent. It brings them to town. Beyond a threshold salary level, people are persuaded to move by quality of life and not money. So you say to Compton, 10% raise for structure stuff at another university. Nah, I'm not moving at 10%. I've been at A&M for 40 years. That's network. 15%. Nah. 20% I'll have to listen. You say to Compton, 15% salary cut. Boulder, Colorado. Hitch up the wagons. It doesn't look like that in College Station, Texas. And so it's the quality of life that moves me, not the money. Once you've got a threshold level of money, you get to pick where you want to land. I mean, my elder daughter works for Deloitte Consulting. And so they say to her, Christine, not too long ago, they said to her, Christine, we want you to go to, she's based in Austin, we want you to work in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And she called me and said, Dad, I told her I'm not going. I said, you fine, yeah. She said, I don't care, I'll work for somebody else. You know, I have the skills to go any place, I can work for somebody else. So then they said, Indianapolis. And I told them, Dad, I'm not going to India no place. I'm not wasting my life in Indianapolis. So then they said, Boston, Massachusetts. Yeah, I'll go there. So these kids, 20, 30-year-olds, who are the people who are driving these businesses, pick and choose where they want to live by the quality of life and the opportunities there. And And if you don't provide them, they're not coming. So, no matter how quality of life is defined, and there are a number of dimensions to it, which I'll talk about later in the day at some other sessions, parks, recreation, open space are a central part of that quality of life. And there are an observation I have made from going around this globe a fair bit. There are no great cities in this world that don't have a great park system, and including recreation and culture in that. Now, a great city is defined as a place you want to live. I mean, there's plenty of big, crummy places in this world, but they're not places you want to live. The places you want to live will have great park, recreation, cultural, ambience experiences there. And the companies well know that there is a dis-amenity compensation element to this. If a company loads incentives are done, they'll move on someplace else because the talent won't stay. They'll have trouble with it. So all of this builds in an economic factor to those park recreation and amenities that we have out there. I was in Minneapolis not too long ago, and there was a CEO just coming into a larger company there, and here's what he told me. He said, I've got 80 people making over $100,000 in this operation. All of my young, aggressive, highly compensated people. They went to the best schools in the country. They are the A players in the business world. I need to have in Minneapolis things that A players want in order to get them here. And what they want, of course, is those kinds of amenities. Parks recreation are what I call an indicator species. And I look at the dictionary. An indicator species is defined as presence, absence, or relative well-being in a given environment indicative of the health of the ecosystem as a whole. When people come to Franklin in Williamson County, you may have a brilliant education system, but they can't see it. You might have a brilliant police and fire system, but they can't see it. What can they see? They can see streets, ambience, parks, trees, landscaping, and those are the clues, the evidence as to how good a community this is. From those visual clues, they generalize about the other things. So if the ambience, the trees, the landscaping, the parks, the trails, the visible things are strong and attractive, they assume the police, the education, the fire are attractive. So these are key indicator species in your community. Let me move on from business relocations and talk about the new clean growth industry in America today, which is retirement relocation. There are a growing number of retired, active, money people in excellent shape. And we are all chasing the grandkids. We are all chasing us grandkids. And why are we chasing us grandkids? Why are we grandkids on economic development tour? In my own community, we have a full-time person in the chamber who goes around the north, the Midwest, trying to bring in retirees to my community. Why? Because they're an economic development tour. If I could bring 100 retired households to my community with a $40,000 annual income, that's a new $4 million annual payroll in the town. And $40,000 is a reasonable retirement income with Social Security and private insurance systems today, private retirement systems today. There's a reasonable income that middle-class folks have. That's an economic development asset that comes to town. Why? Because that Social Security and private retirement incomes are stable. Business cycles might go up and down, but those pensions come rolling rolling in. They're there for the next 20, 30 years, those people are in town. These folks are what I call positive taxpayers. In other words, they make very limited demands upon the city and the county for services. Most importantly, they don't have people in the school system, which costs you a bunch of money. So they're positive taxpayers. They generate more in income in taxes than it costs to service them. They contribute to the healthcare industry. My city, we have developed a tremendous regional healthcare industry because of the retirees coming to town. They've got the money to pay for these things. They're a volunteer pool, obviously, and they stimulate housing and retail, but most importantly, they don't put any pressure on the job market. So my community sees them as a primary economic development tool. And what do they look for? Amenity-rich communities, especially recreation, because that's how they socialize. You make friends, of course, by engaging in people, with people and things. You don't make friends by pressing some button on the machine and saying, "Can I be your friend?" You make friends by getting involved with people on things. And you get involved through your churches, through your recreational activities, through your work, whatever. But for retirees, recreation is a means they socialize. They get to meet and engage with people. That's a primary thing they look for in the community. If you don't have those amenities, they ain't coming, and that's an economic development tool. And so they want to. Recently, I sent my graduate students down the valley in Texas, down Rio Grande Valley, which is the primary retirement area in Texas. And instead of asking what brought you to Texas, I know that, I asked, why did you leave your existing community? And I gave them 40 reasons why they could leave. The number one reason they left their existing community to come to a new community was a desire to live in a more recreationally enjoyable area. Number one reason. Number two, desire to get away from cold weather. Number three, desire to live in a place where recreational opportunities are plentiful. And so the message is this. Not only do you need those amenities to bring those retirees in, but if you do not provide those amenities, the retirees you've got now are going to leave. You're going to lose them. And so they become a key part of your economic development effort. My community, like I suspect these exist in Franklin and Williamson County also, we've got a golf course development. And Mr. Young, who developed it, it's a 1,300-acre site. He took out 150 acres from that housing development to build a golf course. And the cost of building the golf course, and he did this in the 1980s, was $4 million. Now that $4 million, those subdivision lots in that part of town, on the east side of town, were going at $30,000 each. And there were a number of subdivisions where those lots were averaging about $30,000. Pebble Creek was doing 3 lots an acre, and the golf course there for 150 acres replaced 450 lots. At 30,000 an acre, 30,000 a lot, that's 13.5 million. And so if you add the 13.5 million to the golf course costs, it's 17.5 million. And I thought, well, how generous of Mr. Young. He is so concerned about the well-being of the people in Pebble Creek that he would contribute $17.5 million to a golf course. Now that's civic responsibility at its best. But then I looked again. Pebble Creek, he wasn't charging $30,000 like all the other subdivisions. He was charging $40,000. $10,000. The only difference in him and the rest was he had a golf course. And so there were 1,150 remaining acres at 3 lots an acre, 450 lots. So he was going to get 34.5 million by giving away 17.5 million. He wasn't just being civically responsible. He was going to make a profit by creating this golf course. Well, what an inspired idea. Well, where did he get that idea from? 1810, King George III had gone quite mad, because of course he had to deal with you lot in the Boston Tea Party and all of that. And so by 1810, he had been replaced by the Prince Regent because George III got mad, and Prince Regent, of course, became King George IV in 1820. And the Prince Regent had some land in the north of London, and his people came to him and he said, you know, Prince Regent, you've got a lot of cows on this land, and if you put houses on it, you'd make a lot of money. And the Prince Regent said, well, that would be lovely, we'd like to make a lot of money, but we are the crown, we're going to be the king, so we need to make a nice thing. And so he hired John Nash, who had been done designs for country homes in England for many years, for 40 years, and Nash had worked with Humphrey Repton as a leading landscape architect in the area, and he asked Nash to come and design this housing development for him. And so Compton went rummaging around in the archives and found what Nash said about this housing development. He established as a central principle of his plan that the attraction of open space, free air, and scenery of nature with the means and invitation of exercise on horseback, on foot, and in carriages shall be preserved in Marylebone Park, it was in Marylebone, as a moment or motives for the wealthy part of the public to establish themselves. And so at Regent's Park, at Regent's Park, Nash brought in the picturesque landscape that had been pioneered by capable Brown and Repton. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at the world's first urban park, Regent's Park. But what's key about this is you see in the middle of Regent's Park a park, and on the black blobs around the edge you see the famous Nash Terraces, where 2,500 people took up residence. Now this is a private park, and you paid 2 guineas a year when you lived in those residences to have access to the park, and there was a ring road around it. You strutted your stuff in the carriageway and you could promenade and whatever. But the point is that this was a money-making, profitable development. People paid a premium to be able to look out on this urban park. The park, like Mr. Young's golf course, made money. And now you're looking at the world's first public park. In my hometown of Liverpool, they started a new town of Birkenhead just across the Mersey, and they started with a park. And you see again the houses around the edge. It was a real estate development. And the housing was a very successful real estate development. I rummaged around in the archives and did the sums and so on. They made a lot of money from this using the same principles, because there's a public park. So everybody can come on in. And from the get-go it was recognized that parks create value on the tax rolls and make money. That's how we started. And then you had this guy Olmsted, who was your famous architect, the pioneer of parks in America, who came over to Birkenhead Park, saw it, and in his diaries recalls, I saw a perfection I had never dreamed of. I cannot undertake to describe the effect of so much taste and skill as had evidently been employed. And all this magnificent pleasure ground is entirely and reservedly and forever the people's own, which are required. He paid for it by the honest owners, the most wise and worthy people of Birkenhead, in the same way that New Yorkers pay for the tombs, which is their prison, and the hospital and the cleaning, as they usually say, of their streets. Olmsted saw how this was done. Well, not just the designs, which were Paxton's brilliant designs, did he pick up, but he saw how they were done. He brought it to Central Park, the first great park in America. Central Park was built as a real estate, by the real estate around it, as a highly profitable enterprise. The tax base for New York gained hundreds of millions of dollars over a period of years as a result of the creation of the park. And the Olmsted Company, as you know, went around America and built hundreds of parks on the premise that parks created value for the real estate around it, and that real estate, the taxable value of that, paid basically for the cost of the park. Parks had economic value. So there is for some unknown reason this slide hasn't come out. This is basically a model of tourism which says a population get transported to attractions who tell people about them, and they get transported to attractions and so on. There's a circular rhythm there. What is it that drives people, drives tourism? And the answer is attractions. Nobody comes to Findlay because they want to spend, 2 hours on American Island getting here. Or they want to drive 4 hours to get here. They come here because there's an attraction. What are the major attractions in Findlay and Williamson County? I don't know, but this list probably is fairly representative. You've got arts in here, theatres, art galleries, museums. You've got heritage places like your battlefield and so on. You've got parks here. You've got all kinds of recreation events, which the mayor indicated earlier, the people coming into town. You've got arenas, and you've got. If you look through that list, what do you find common through that list? You will find, when you go through that list, 90% of them are run by the public and non-profit sectors. Most of the attractions in Williamson County will be public, unless it's very atypical, will be public or non-profit operated. Now, if attractions drive tourism, and most of your attractions are public or non-profit oriented, operated, then and those attractions are driving it, then tourism is a public, non-profit sector-driven business. Now, most of us think of tourism as being the hotels and the restaurants and the retail and so on. Those are the folks who rely on the attractions. No attractions, those folks don't do business. In my community, the hoteliers are the chief advocates of new athletic fields and sports developments because it fills their hotels, as the mayor just indicated. And that's why we use hotel money to develop most of those things. And so tourism is driven by public non-profit sectors. So again, recreation parks central to your economic development. I've touched on just 4. I've touched on their role in business relocation, their role in attracting retirees, and retirees attractions many times falls under the radar screen because economic development people don't get credit for it. You can't count heads, and so they don't get, so it doesn't appeal on anybody's goals, but it should. And the third thing is you get economic impact from the enhanced property base you get from building these things. The fourth thing I want to talk about this morning is it's central to tourism. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I've used up my 20 minutes. If there's time for questions, Mindy, I'll be happy to take them. Otherwise, it's your show.
Thank you so much. Mayor Kenmore and County Mayor Roger Sanderson are going to join us on stage, and we'll have some questions. Mayor Moore or Mayor Anderson, do either of you have questions?
I concur. I like your thought, Roger. I concur too. What a great presentation, and how to help us focus on the importance of parkland in our community. Oftentimes it's a contentious issue whenever we're buying parkland or parklands being dedicated by our developers, and you've certainly put that in focus today. So it's a great message.
I have to say, Mayor, that it's unusual for me to come into a community and find Mayor so receptive. I mean, to be introduced by Rogers here saying that all of these economic dimensions of parks and recreation is highly unusual. Most times in most communities that is not recognized. They're regarded as sort of frivolous extra things. If we've got money over, we'll spend a bit on parks and recreation. If we've got to cut something, we'll cut parks and recreation. And there's generally not a recognition of the central economic role that they play in the community. It was very refreshing to hear you both talk about that role before I started today.
One caveat, I think that our community over the years, in the 30 years that I've been involved here in this community, is that we try to centralize our sports and park sports and leisure based upon the age of our community, soccer, traditional sports as we see. And we are seeing a larger group of senior retirees moving into our community. And one of the hottest new items is popping up. In fact, we were meeting with staff the other day trying to deal with a new item. Now, we've got ping pong, we've got lacrosse, we've got rugby, we've got all those. The new one is pickleball. So you'll need to come back when we get our pickleball and see how you handle that.
Now you hit on another key idea, and that is if you look at the leisure market today, you see it's very much senior driven. Now, parks and recreation people traditionally have regarded senior citizens as sort of a small clientele on the end. And that mindset has to change, because if you look at the leisure business in the commercial sector, it's being driven by us seniors. We have discretionary income, we have time, we have the resources, and we engage. And local agencies still many times are too focused on youth at the exclusion of citizens. There's got to be reorientation. Citizens, seniors now are living 10 years longer in retirement than they were 30, 40 years ago, and they're a market we should be much more aggressive in pursuing.
I'd like for you to maybe make a brief comment about the link between health and our parks. Our health.
The link with health and parks is very difficult empirically to prove, but historically, when you look at how parks came into being, they came into being for health reasons. Let me briefly tell you what those reasons were. If you go back, you will find that the urban parks in this country, like in Europe, emerged in the most industrialized cities. Now, why would a place like New York, Baltimore, Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, where urban parks emerged in this country, which had massive problems in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s of urban debilitation? I mean, there was no sanitation, there was no building regulations. I mean, they were massive slums. Why would they go out and spend what in today's money is hundreds of millions of dollars on parks? That was bizarre. Well, they did it for health reasons, because in those days they believed miasmus was a sort of all illness. Miasmus, of course, means obnoxious gases. That illness came about through the smells, the stinks, and cities stank. And Joseph Priestley had in 1870 and 1870, 90s done the experiment you've all done in your chemistry labs. He had put the candle in the jar, and the candle had gone out when you put the stopper on. When you put some vegetation in the jar, the candle had stayed lit, there was oxygen. And so they recognized in the early 1800s that if you created oases of trees and open space, you were creating clean air. And that's, of course, why the wealthy located around those places, because they would live longer, and parks were a source of clean air and a reduction in health problems. So urban parks started in health. That was our heritage. And there's no question today that people exercise more when they're closer to parks. And so that health maxim is still, that health rationale is very much there. And we're talking about activity-rich communities. If the area is conducive to people exercising with sidewalks, trails, and parks, people will. If it isn't conducive to it, they won't. And as you go out on your trails today, you were referencing some of your trails earlier there, you will find primary people using those trails are those seniors, are those retirees in those. And that's one of the key amenities that they look for.
Thank you so much. We are going to have time for a couple questions. I want to alert you that at our 2 o'clock, after our 2 o'clock groundbreaking today at the park at Harlansdale, we will also have another session with Dr. Compton at 3:30 at Franklin City Hall. It is really to help us hone in on some of the issues that he's brought forth today, and also to talk a little bit about Franklin Tomorrow's top priorities for 2015, which include connectivity. The citizens have told us for a number of years that that is important to them, and we think that means the construction of contiguous trails and greenways for walking and bicycling, as well as a river walk. Franklin wants a river walk, and we do too. And so that'll be at 3:30 today. Do we have any questions from the audience? Elizabeth is out there with the microphone. If you have a question, raise your hand or stand up. Up over there.
Cerulli with Realty Trust Residential. And my question is regarding the retirement communities. It is difficult to see where the cities of Williamson County are actually developing properties that are conducive to retirement. And where do we see that go in the future? And I guess that would be for either Rogers or Kenmore.
I think that already we see changes in the demographics of our community, that we're having more seniors. So they're finding spots to live. And whether you're referring to a community that's dedicated specifically for a certain age group, we have a few already. That's something that the private market would bring us. We did consider one at the Board of Mayor and Alderman this last year, and it didn't get off the ground because it wasn't in the right place. So I think that as we go forward, developers hopefully will bring us projects that are more suitable for locating, for less impact on our traffic, closer to services that are available, and they also like to walk. I think that we need to, as a board, continue to look at opportunities for developments to be more walkable, closer to amenities such as the parks, and so on.
Rogers, you.
Paula, I think in the county, because of our land use and zoning, as you probably know, that exclusively outside the city limits, we are on septic tanks, and so that's not as an economic impact for developers to be able to do that. What we've decided to do in that arena of retirement area is focus our attention and our resources on those services as far as amenities. As Compton said, we're in the process of doing a master plan now for a new senior citizen just a stone's throw from here that will house 20,000 square feet. And we're utilizing a different model. Our senior citizen can come in the morning, seems to be their time, and then in the afternoon we'll convert that back over to more student driven, because there's a middle college high school that's now called Renaissance High there. We're doing a performing arts theater that we're doing, and at all of our rec centers throughout the county, and then in our parks. You can check with the other mayors. They're investing in their infrastructure. Brentwood, my goodness, they just tied in 1,000 acres in a fabulous park, and all of that adds up to a higher quality of life. I don't see the county changing their land usage. Yes, we're the fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee, but the unincorporated area, we're one of the slowest, and that's by design. And I don't feel that I need to start tinkering with that. We do love our open space and our lands and our horses and our cattle. And as all of you know, you go out to the ag park, it's used 48 weekends a year, from fairs to cattle to you name it, it's out there. Right now, the state wrestling championship is finished, and we'll finish up, next weekend. So we're probably not going to change that model, or that won't be my direction. Y'all can change me if you want to, but that direction is not the way we're going.
Well, and Paula, it's a good thing that you were the person to ask the first question this morning. You've won a great door prize from World Cup Coffee, which let's thank World Cup for being a great breakfast sponsor as well. We've got time for one more question. Elizabeth has one more question with Steve Ball.
Hi, good morning. My name is Steve. And first, I want to say thank you to Rogers. I participate in the Senior Olympics. It's been virtually life-saving for my friends and I. We appreciate the great job that the county does with that, and I know that everyone in the organization and Blue Cross Blue Shield does as well. My question, however, is for Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore, can we say with certainty right now where the next active, family-oriented park will be inside the city limits of Franklin?
I can guess. Much of our development now is south of the city and east of I-65, and we anticipate that there are going to be some land dedicated with one of those developments that will be a significant east side of the interstate going south toward that property and connecting into Lad Park. So it's going to be, I would say, one of the more scenic greenway areas in our city, and also it's a great opportunity to connect those neighborhoods who are going to need parks also.
Thank you so much for being here. And Dr. Compton, we want to give you a little memento of your visit to Franklin and Williamson County, one of our commemorative pillows for Harvestdale Farm, and we'll be doing our groundbreaking today at 2 o'clock. So thank you so much. This is the first breakfast with the mayors this year. This is the first of 4 breakfasts with the mayors this year. The other dates in 2015 are May 5th, August 4th, and November 3rd. We've asked you to mark your calendars now. If you're signed up online for this breakfast, you should receive information regarding the next breakfast. We've got our friends from United Way are here today to promote 2 events, including one of the most fun events that there is in Williamson County. That's the Taste of Williamson, which will be in April at the Cool Springs Galleria, and then this Friday they have a breakfast as well. Again, we couldn't do breakfast with the mayors without our partners, and we appreciate their support so much, from Pinnacle Financial Partners, as well as Williamson Medical Center, Tennessee Equine, Royal Cup Coffee, and Puckett's Grocery and Restaurant. We will be back together again on May 5th, and I can't do this event without the wonderful support of the Breakfast with the Mayors Committee that is co-chaired by Dr. Sean Jackson of Columbia State Community College and Elizabeth Mefford of the Better Business Bureau and their committee, and they work very hard to make these events successful and to make me and Kathy look good. So we really appreciate that. But thank you so much, and we'll see you on May 5th or this afternoon at 2 o'clock